if anyone has any other questions, please do feel free to unmute or pop them into the chat. And we'll now hand over to the tech team. So Matt and Justin and Ronnie and Steve, Riza, George, over to you to help people with any questions they might have around the EASI platform. There's also folks like myself and Brendan available if you have questions about the science of the Earth observation as well. And there's of course folks like Emma and myself to help you understand any aspects of the hackathon itself that might not be as clear to you yet. So please feel free to turn your video on, turn your audio on, and ask us questions or place the questions into the chat. Don't be shy now.
So I'm looking at the participant agreement. Why go into the link? Obviously, I don't have editor access. And when I do a save copy local, why open it up? It's just blank. I'm pretty sure if I try to select all, I will see things, but everything is just white on white. Oh, actually, if I select all, I can start to see a little bit of things. Is anybody else having problems?
Yeah, I saw something similar. I assume just because I was looking at the browser in Linux.
Yeah, I had that as well. I'm thinking it's probably browser Word, but I haven't got a local copy, so I'm not sure.
Well, what I'll do is I will email an attachment of it over to everyone now, because if you're having the problem, it seems as though it's not just isolated to you. So I'm glad that you raised that, and I'll sort out an attachment via email to everybody now. Thank you. Please keep on asking questions and answering questions in the meantime.
May I continue a little bit on that issue earlier? Roshni?
Please.
Yes, I tried to download when we open the hackathon participant agreement, it just goes blank. But after downloading, then we have the whole file. I was able to access it. Yeah, just to share.
While Roshni's working on that, I have a question for Matt. I'm just noticing that Pastor G.P. Garcia has asked about mapping of peatland area changes in the Philippines. Out of curiosity, Matt, how far does the Landsat archive go back over that part of the world?
Back in time?
Yeah, back in time. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
that's okay. I haven't specifically checked that. I expect it's essentially the full Landsat archive that we have access to, which is Landsat 5, 7, 8, and 9 series of satellites. Someone can fill in the blank here. I'm talking off the top of my head, but I think
Yeah.
Landsat 5 goes back to the mid 1980s or thereabouts
Fantastic.
from memory. So, oh yeah, I haven't specifically checked for the Philippines, but I expect USGS have done a sterling job in covering all land masses around the globe.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that case, we should definitely be able to look at the patterns of change in peatland areas of the Philippines throughout this week, for example.
I might ask a question of Matt. What is the potential for getting higher resolution imagery? Because you know, quite often we're looking at very small scale issues.
Yeah, excellent question. Thanks, Steve. It's two parts to the answer there. One is getting access to the high resolution imagery. If it's and that's a matter of finding the right source for the data. Some of the there are some commercial companies and entities, Maxar and Planet Labs, for example, which have a pay for service, pay for data model for their suite of satellites that they operate. So it's not because it's pay for use, it's not readily available to us, although collectively that's an area we do want to move into. Geoscience Australia and CSIRO, well, I can speak from CSIRO's point of view, and I expect Geo will be happy to move in that area as well. So that's one aspect, which is where and how do we access the data. If it's but Maxor and Planet Labs aren't the only sources of these data. So as long as we can find the data and access it and get it, then you know, we can put it make it available into the EASI system, and it can be used. So we've just got to navigate around the licensing aspects of the source data. It's the first answer to the question. The second part of my answer would be to utilize the Open Data Cube software on high resolution imagery, we'll need to consider the aspects of that spatially aligning pixels so we can drill through time. And in terms of the high resolution data, if it was airborne or something similar to that degree rather than satellite, it's technically a little bit more onerous, complicated to get all the pixels mapped onto a common grid. But as long as we could overcome those technical hurdles, then we could have the high resolution data, drone, airborne, high res satellite, all available in the Open Data Cube. So we don't need to put high resolution data. We don't need to put all data or any data through the Open Data Cube. The Open Data Cube gives us additional features and tools to work with some of these data when applicable. The main point is just getting access to the source data and under an appropriate license.
So if we get access one way or another to some higher resolution data, we can combine it with the Data Cube data? Yeah,
Exactly. In principle, your high resolution data gets uploaded onto the system, so it's there. It doesn't have to be available to everyone. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just for your own use in your area, your work directory area, and once you can open the imagery with a Python geospatial tool such as Raster.io or GDAL or something similar. At that point, you're in the Python ecosystem, so you can combine it with other data sets.
Okay. And in terms of spatially aligning it with the other pixels and stuff, that would be just down to us, but you could probably provide us advice, I suppose.
Yeah. That would be, that would be a good topic for one of the drop-in sessions this week.
Okay.
Between the GA helpers and myself and colleagues would be able to provide advice around how to go about that process.
Okay, thank you.
Just if I may, the acquisition of high-res private company imagery might be something that we can look into for those shortlisted ideas that make it to the next round. So we'll need to check our budget and see what's possible, but that's certainly something we could explore if you have a potentially viable concept.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick question from Matt, if that's okay. Just on the Sentinel-1 data, you mentioned it was coming soon. Is there, I mean, is that sort of, yeah, how soon is soon? And the, probably a loaded question, but yeah, the other one on that, is there any sort of sample data around that that's available in EASI, or is it just, yeah, we can't sort of touch that at the moment?
Yeah, no, fair question. Sentinel-1 data. So we have a prototype version of Sentinel-1 backscatter, and more importantly, the processing workflow to generate other products out of Sentinel-1, other stuff beyond backscatter. But backscatter is the common starting point for some of these radar data out of Sentinel-1. The full archive of Sentinel-1 backscatter data is available from a European company called Synergize. So we could just tap into their their data archive directly and copy over some subsets, and we'll be up and going pretty straightforwardly, I think, in that regard. You can look that company up if you like, Synergize, spelt with an I rather than a Y. Someone may get to put the link into the chat before I do. They're working in the same kind of space as EOCSI Australia and CSIRO are here, and they're providing platforms and custom services, value-added services to the Copernicus satellite data in this case. Thank you, George. So those data are available, and if we went to Synergize, we'd have the backscatter product for most areas. A lot of the prototype workflow that we have running in EASI acquires the same Sentinel-1 raw data, either the GRD version or the SLC version, from the Alaska SAR facility, because their APIs and their access points are a little bit easier for us rather than going through Copernicus. And then it runs through a snap processing workflow to generate backscatter. It's at a prototype point because we've run products through and we've compared them with desktop and HPC processing workflows using Snap as well. So we know the cloud version works and it's consistent. All I need to do to operationalize that is to just turn it into an operational workflow, which just means going through and dotting the I's and crossing the T's and building all the components to stitch it all together. So to answer your question, soon is probably a matter of weeks before I get to do that. Would have been nice to have it done this week, but other things get in the way sometimes. So you could expect to have Sentinel-1 data available through the course of the proof of concept development beyond this hackathon week. But to play with some during this week or very soon, then I might work with our GA colleagues to get a little bit of example data into play. So we can start to look at that. thank you for the question.
Great, thanks, Jonathan.
I see next Bintang has their hand raised. The floor is yours. Please ask your question.
Yeah, I'm originally from Indonesia. Yeah, my question is so simple. Yeah, what the document you share in folder. So the access mode is view mode, not editable document. Would you mind to change it? Yeah, from view mode to editable document. So I cannot edit the document for participation agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for being so diligent and conscientious for trying to complete your participant form already. That's great news.
No worries. That's great.
I think Roshni is following up on making an editable version of that participant agreement and sharing it ASAP with participants. So no need
all
to
of
worry.
them, not only participation agreement, but yeah, all of them, yeah, related document.
Yeah. Oh. That's why this is called a tech drop-in session. Firstly, we have to sort the tech issues with Microsoft. Yeah.
Last question. Would you mind to explain me about the phase two hackathon?
Sure.
What is that? So what's the relation with this hackathon? Is this a first phase hackathon?
Yeah. So this is the first phase, and I've got a great diagram, but it's going to take me a minute to pull up. So I'll just talk first, and then when we move to a next question, I'll quickly see if I can find that diagram for you. So if you've ever been involved in an entrepreneurial role, you'll know that not all good ideas actually are going to be commercially viable. And some ideas are easier to implement than others, even though at the starting point you may not know that. So through this week, what we want to do is to finesse that, or to polish your idea and to make it a bit, to strengthen the concept, your concept. In the next phase, perhaps the top 3 ideas from coming out of this group will go on to the second round, where it's actually about really building the primary product. So it's taking it a little bit further down that product development value chain. So it really depends what we get as a result out of the ideas this week as to how far we can go. But I think the important thing here is the learning journey. So we, Team CSIRO, Frontier SI, GA, Amazon Web Service, Symbios, and a whole bunch of other people throughout this week are going to help you and mentor you through that journey this week. And so it's a bit of an opportunity, if you've not done this before, to take an idea and to move it along to an actual product. So yeah, I think that's my thinking in my head, but I sort of welcome anyone else from the project team to explain it in their own words if they think that's helpful.
Thank you for your genuine explanation, Emma, Luke. Yeah.
Yep, my absolute pleasure. I'll see if I can just find that slide for you.
Great. Thank you. Can I ask one question, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not so sure about some technology, Earth observation technology that can measure soil water regimes, because in agriculture, soil water is very important, especially in looking at potential areas for climate change, something like resiliency.
Yeah. So the first thing to say is I'm not a satellite expert, but we'll have some people throughout this week who are experts on the wonderful and many varied ways that you can measure different aspects of the Earth. I will say that here in Australia, we have several water-based products which look at all aspects of surface water, I think. I'm not sure about groundwater. I'd need to check. Peatlands is an interesting area. So I might just check in with one of our scientists here who has been looking at patterns of change to a World Heritage peatland area here in Australia. And actually, it's just outside my hometown. And get back to you with a little bit more information about what products, what data sources we used and what we could measure. But once again, because I'm a generalist, I'll have to go away and just find out what the details are.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. That's what Tech Drop-Ins are all about, all of the questions.
I have a question about the Earth observation data.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember in the slides, there was one part that says that there is a data based on flood risk. So I'm not sure in terms of time series, how far back in time do we have the flood risk data until? What is the resolution of the data, as well as how close in time do they update? Because I'm trying to think about, does urban green space distribution affect flood risk in cities, especially if coastal areas are at risk of flooding in climate change in future?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. Both Matt and I are nodding our heads here. So I'm actually going to hand over to Matt, and also I don't know whether some of the other CSIRO scientists on the line want to add a few words, but they're very welcome to do so. So I'm just going to hand over to you both. I'm going to see if I can find that other slide.
Thank you, Emma. Much of the flood risk that you've seen to date will be based off Landsat data. Landsat is available at 30-metre pixel resolution and a long time series, back to the mid-80s or mid-90s, so a couple of decades worth of data. One of the complications, though, with using Landsat potentially in Southeast Asia is cloud cover, because the Landsat and Sentinel-2 sensors in particular are using infrared and optical wavelengths, which see the top of clouds rather than through the clouds. So what it means is that to get a temporal, that the effective temporal resolution that we can derive over any particular region is sometimes has to be quite coarser than the available satellite data overpasses. So typically we start to find that monthly summaries or even seasonal summaries for some data sets or some regions of interest start to get us enough clear sky pixel information over our region. So that's a consideration, and it's not something that any of us have a lot of control over, because clouds are clouds, but it does affect what we could expect our analyses to provide for ourselves. The incorporation of Sentinel-1 data, or in particular radar, synthetic aperture radar data from a couple of different, available from a couple of different sensors, including Sentinel-1, is a little bit more exciting, because the radar data penetrates cloud and gives a response from the Earth's surface. So we're not as hindered by seasonal cloud cover characteristics. But interpreting the Sentinel-1 data in a flood mapping or monitoring process is scientifically a bit more complicated. At this point, I get into a deep end of my knowledge, so I might offer an opportunity to one of our colleagues, Eric, who does more work with these Sentinel data than I do around flood, to add any further comments. If you can, Eric, please.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can you hear me? Cool. Yeah, no, thanks very much. I was going to comment along exactly the same lines as you did, Matt. So if you're after a quick response or some kind of remote sensing data that allows you to have a unimpeded view of events such as water mapping and flooding, then definitely maybe SAR data, synthetic aperture radar might be your best bet there. And we have certainly been doing some work along these lines, trying to do some water mapping using Sentinel-1 datasets in particular. So we've been working on that lately at my work, CSRO. But currently there is no such datasets, right, in the current deployment. I'm just confirming this with Matt. The plan is to ultimately bring in further workflows to get these Sentinel-1 datasets up and running on the EASI platform, but currently not available as yet. So I'm not sure if that answers fully the question. Happy to continue the discussion further if need be.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. So regarding cloud cover, if that affects the resolution of the data set, so how does it work? Is it, say, like maybe every month or every season there will be a certain fixed time where the picture is taken, and if the data gets covered by cloud, then the whole month's data is skewed, or is it there will be people finding for a perfect day within this month to like snapshot a perfect image of the waters?
Sorry, are you talking about the radar or optical data there? I missed the beginning of the sentence.
The data that captures flood data from satellites.
Yeah. Okay. So the current data sets that we have on the EASI platform is optical. So Landsat and Sentinel-2 type data sets. And they are, as Matt mentioned, impacted by clouds. And this is indeed a case of you get satellite observations every time the satellite passes over your area of interest, takes a picture, if you like, of the ground, and that happens typically for the Landsat satellites, various Landsat satellites, with a 2-week or 14 days, I think, sort of temporal frequency. I'm not sure about the Sentinel-2 sort of time series, but that's, you know, every few days you will get one observation, and if you happen to have indeed cloud coverage at that particular time when the satellite passes over your region of interest, then you get a picture which is worthless, basically, in terms of being able to analyze the ground underneath the cloud cover. So you're kind of tied to these methodological effects in your data set. And again, if you want to capture a particular flood event or rainfall event or whatever you, then you cannot guarantee that you're going to have the satellite pass over exactly the right time. And even if it does, you know, you can't guarantee that it's going to be cloud-free acquisition. So this is definitely something to think about and to consider in the workflows.
I see. So, sorry, last thing to confirm. I'm assuming we have access to data all over the world, or is that limited to certain parts of the world only?
So the data can be acquired for all over the world. At the moment, you might have seen from a presentation, from Matt's presentation earlier this afternoon, there is coverage over Southeast Asia predominantly, and the rest of the world. I guess Matt can confirm this, but if there is a particular case study that is required to have data acquired elsewhere, this can be accommodated on the EASI platform that's used for this hackathon. Whether that can be made available during this week for this hackathon event, I'm not quite sure, but data is available for, you know, things like satellites, Landsat and Sentinel-2 acquisitions. They gather information, or they do acquisitions for the entire planet with that revisited frequency that I was talking about. So the data is available. You know, you have to kind of download it, process it, and then make it available on the EASI platform. So it's available from the space agencies, but not necessarily within the EASI platform that we're going to be using this week. But it can be. It's just a matter of requesting it and whether that can be done this week. We can confirm this, but it could potentially be available.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So I promised that I would pull up a slide which explains the difference between phase 1 and phase 2. So just give me one moment if I can share screen. This is not the best slide because it's used for a different purpose, but it does actually show you the value chain. So throughout this week, we'll be working on the first 2 steps. This value chain, this process is known as the Open Data Cube product development chain. So you start with a good idea, which then you turn into a concept. So those are the 2 things that we're trying to do through this week. And then if you go into the next step, there will be the prototyping stage. So we might get a little bit into some of the prototyping stage this week. It's really hard to know until we start looking at the ideas and see what's possible. But there are many steps along the way, and the idea is that we will be supporting you with the first 3 parts of this process and giving you some directions on how to make your ideas operational into the future. So that's the first thing I wanted to share, just while other folk are thinking of good questions to ask. The other one is just quickly following on to the discussion about peatlands, is the work that Geoscience Australia has been doing on the Digital Earth Australia platform. So if you just bear with me one moment, and I can make this slide available later for those who might be interested. So as you can see, we have a Ramsar wetland close to my hometown, which is a very unique and specialised environment where migratory water birds, rare ones, spend time, and they go there in the drought because they know that there will be water there. We also have a special little frog known as the Corroboree Frog. It's quite rare and it's threatened. And it's an important natural habitat for this particular frog. So through this same technology, the Open Data Cube technology, we're able to look over quite a long period of time on the patterns of the wetlands dryness and, well, being wet. I don't know what the correct scientific term is, and I apologize for that, but you can see over time this fractional cover algorithm helps to identify when the wetlands have full open water as opposed to dry vegetation or green vegetation. And if you look along the time series, you'll see that over time, unfortunately, these wetlands are getting drier. And that has very important implications for our local government in terms of thinking through methods to protect this unique and important habitat in response to the patterns of changing climate. So the fractional cover algorithm is produced by Digital Earth Australia, but once again, it can be interoperable with Matt's Open Data Cube built on EASI. There are a few steps involved, but if we look like we're having a promising idea throughout this week around wetlands in Southeast Asia, that's something we can look to do. Thumbs up from Matt. Okay, that's good. We're on the same page. Lovely. Do we have any more questions? I'd certainly be interested, just to get us all warmed up, to hear if you want to, what are some of the experiences of you in your country and what your major impacts of climate change are. Sorry, that was very badly articulated by me, but if you're interested in saying where you're from and how you're seeing climate change affect your hometown, that would be of great interest. So for me here in Canberra, typically we usually only have rain in autumn and in spring, but we've had a very, very wet winter here because of a lot of the flooding that's happened in Australia on our eastern coast. Most of it's to do with La Nina cycle. We've had a couple of those and 3 quite significant flooding events in the first half of this year. So that's one of the ways that climate change is impacting my local area, but also my state. Would anyone else like to volunteer?
Hi.
Oh, hello.
I could share a bit about my experience in Singapore.
Please, yes.
Actually, Singapore's main issues for climate change is the weather's getting hotter and we're getting more flash floods. So I think it's because we usually use canals to drain out water during intense rainfall events. However, it seems that these drainage canals are limited and they're getting blocked. So they are trying to develop parks and green spaces and using that to diffuse away the water. And that's what the direction Singapore's moving towards. We're moving towards a very nature-based solutions, and they're trying to do a lot of revamping. They're trying to reclaim land near military-based islands to move all of our military activities there, and tearing down air bases such as Paya Lebar Air Base to make it into a whole new park connector that links the eastern side and northern side of Singapore. So yeah, we're doing a lot of revamping to create really green towns that are walkable and full of green areas that provide shading for all of us.
Thank you so very much for sharing that insight. And Singapore has always been very forward-leaning on innovation and also nature-based solutions. Yes, and as a relatively small area, I guess the impacts of climate change are quite severe or have the potential to be quite severe in Singapore. So yeah, it's interesting to know about this, and hopefully throughout this week we might be able to develop some applications or some ideas that could be explored more using Earth observation. Do we have anyone from Vietnam or maybe Thailand who'd like to share their experience of climate change in their hometown? Or any other questions about Matt's EASI platform? Oh, you're all so shy. That's okay. We'll have many opportunities to network throughout the week. And by the end of the week, I think we'll all be firm friends. I can see Eric has it. He's thinking about speaking. Oh, we've got Steve, a raised hand.
Yeah, if Eric wants to speak, he can go.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, I don't want to talk too much, but in Malaysia, it's similar situation to Singapore that Akash is talking about. We're definitely getting more floods. It's definitely getting hotter. I talk to people, but unfortunately, Malaysia is, well, there are some places. University of Malaysia has some great nature-based solutions for drainage, but generally the strategy here for traffic and water is to build bigger canals and get it moving faster, bigger freeways, bigger canals. But when the water hits the full river, it just banks up, of course. So we're working on trying to promote, you know, there are some good examples, so we're working on trying to promote that. But one interesting thing is talking to people that grew up here, like my wife and some colleagues, is they said the sky has changed colour. It used to have a yellow haze all the time. One of the benefits of that is we're getting less cloud cover for our satellite images. I mean, it's probably marginal benefit to us, but it is, we're actually getting clearer skies now than we used to have. people said, people said that they'd never really seen blue skies when they grew up in Malaysia. They just didn't know what a blue sky was till they went overseas. But now we get it quite a lot of blue sky days. So I doubt if that's helping in Sabah and places like that, but it's making a bit of a difference here. So I don't know how that quantifies in terms of getting clearer images, but it's an interesting side effect.
That's something we very definitely have to investigate, because we can probably do some kind of comparison of cloudy days versus non-cloudy days in Malaysia over time.
It's not that we want to promote climate change, but
no, we don't. Sometimes climate change can be not always a bad thing. Certainly, in Canberra, it's very cold over winter, but we have generally, apart from this winter, which has been extremely cold, we're having fewer very cold mornings, which certainly I'm very appreciative of. Yeah, Eric, I think you wanted to share some thoughts before.
Just a quick comment, yeah, because your question reminded me of a chat I had with my parents yesterday, actually, and I live in Canberra as well, as you know, but my parents live in Europe, so they had been to a holiday in France. They have been lately, and commenting on the fact that the bushfires are getting worse and worse, throughout the years. Comparing to what it used to be like 10, 20, 30 years ago. So, and also commenting on the fact that the US is getting really impacted by bushfires over the last few years. And I think that's definitely, climate change, obvious, plain for everyone to see there. And that's what we have to deal with if we don't change our ways, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually going to put the very lovely Rachel Hallwood from Geoscience Australia on the spot to talk a little bit about what she did in her honours-based project, which wasn't with the data cube, but it was with satellite data.
Thanks, Emma. Absolutely. It was, I predominantly use open source imagery, so through Sentinel-2 and Landsat, so it was all optical. But really the application of this satellite imagery to monitor vegetation growth along transmission line corridors, which is really the removal of vegetation near any power lines to prevent any convergence with the power lines to stop sparks and potential bushfires. So really assisting companies with the monitoring of this vegetation growth near their infrastructure, instead of actually driving out and visiting, thousands of kilometers worth of power lines, they could just use satellite imagery as at least a support tool to help assist them with this monitoring and management. And it's open source, so it was really free. It was a free source that they're not currently tapping into, at least in New South Wales. So it provided them with a really exhaustive data set that they could tap into in future. So I think they'd be interested.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a really excellent example of using this freely available information to help businesses and government be a bit more efficient, quicker and smarter, and efficient with their resources, because before it would take a really long time to assess individual areas, I imagine, whereas through Rachel's project, I think you found that it was possible to analyse remotely and come up with some good answers about what the risk profile was in particular areas.
Absolutely, yeah. And particularly as the threat of bushfires is just increasing in intensity and magnitude and frequency, at least in Australia. I'm sure it's the same in Southeast Asia. Any additional tools to help with the management is always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. I'm just noticing the time, and I know that we've been doing this fairly, we've had a very long and hopefully exciting set of presentations and lots of information shared. If there aren't any other questions at this point, we might actually just close this session, if that is okay. Unless, oh, hi Roshni, how are you? Did you want to say a little bit
Good,
about
thank you.
what happens next?
Sure. So we will be restarting in the morning at, I guess, various times depending on which time zone you're in. But I'll just pull up the program so I can share it with you. All right, so tomorrow we will start having a look at, in the morning, so 11 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra time, we'll have the first of our tech team workshops. This will focus on different types of Earth observation imagery and help you to understand what sort of imagery will be best suited for the particular question or challenge area that you're seeking to work in. Following this, we'll have 3 keynotes. So we'll hear from Mark Matthews at Cyano Lakes, Nick Suter from Conservation International, and Professor Roland Barkey and Dr. Andang Suryana Soma from the University of Hasunadin. And then we'll jump into some question and answer sessions. So the focus of that keynote session will be success stories of how Earth observation has been used to tackle climate innovation. Following this, we'll have a different sort of networking to what we did today. And the focus of that will be looking at each of the challenge theme areas and people, so you'll all be able to choose which breakout rooms you'd like to go into. We'll have different rooms available based on each of the challenge themes, and you'll be able to move through the rooms as you prefer to get to know other people, pardon me, within the context of each of the challenge themes. Following that, we'll have our second tech workshop, which will be gold standard examples of what's possible with EASI. Then we'll have a fantastic session with AsiaLink, where we'll explore what the market opportunities are across each of the Southeast Asian markets and the Australian market as well. So that will be a really important session to help you understand how to approach commercialization, how to approach entrepreneurship, how to think about who your target audience is. And then we will have our final tech workshop, which is easy tips and tricks. So a gentle reminder to please have a look at the participants agreement now if you can, and get that completed and send it back to us. You can email it to me or Melanie Plum. Both of our contact details will be in your inbox now. You can. It's also a good idea to have a look at the participants handbook, which has lots of information about all aspects of the hackathon, and join the Discord server where you can continue to ask questions, meet people, and talk about ideas. And I guess that draws today to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.
So Roshni, can I just quickly confirm with you, you've now emailed all of the documents that the participants need to read and sign out by email? Because I think the comment was before, and you might have missed it, was that some people couldn't access any of the documentation.
Okay, I've emailed the participants handbook, the participants agreement, and the program for the session. I will send another email which contains the other 2 documents, one being the template slides for the closing ceremony, and the application form for phase 2. We have a small challenge in that the tech session, the drop-in booking sheet, is only available online. Let me have a think overnight and see if I can work out a solution for anyone who can't access it in Google Drive as it is now. So I'll come to you in the morning, hopefully with some more ideas on that.
And just one last thing, sorry, Rajni. What time are we starting tomorrow, just in terms of Australian times, just so everyone, wherever they are in the region, can actually convert it to their time?
Definitely. So tomorrow morning we'll be starting at 11 a.m. AEST. That's 11 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra time. So I believe I've got a document here which speaks through each of the different countries. If you give me a second, I can.
We can also just link the world planner to help convert it.
Absolutely, yes.
Local. Or if you've got an iPhone, you can just work that out using your time zone function.
So 11 a.m. Sydney time will be 11 a.m. for Melbourne and Canberra as well. If you're located in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, or Perth, that will be 9 a.m. tomorrow. If you're located in Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, or Indonesia, that will be 8 a.m. tomorrow. And if you're located in Myanmar, that will be 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you.